everyone. Welcome back to Fieldr Academy Podcast. My name is Connor Firmender, co-founder and CEO of Fieldr. Also your host for this podcast, where we deliver tips, insights, and information to help all of our fellow business partners, business owners, staff, employees, and students. In episode 3, this episode titled Sustainability Through Metrics, we're going to be discussing the best practices for businesses to sustain with less monthly revenue and retention. With the current COVID-19 crisis, businesses are facing ultimate lows in revenue and profits, most likely since the startup days for some, unfortunately. Some businesses, such as the Cheesecake Factory, have even expressed that they're unable to pay rent for their upcoming April month, this month, and they're not alone. With less revenue coming in, meaning tighter cash flow and decreased customer retention, businesses must be made aware of strategic ways that they can keep the doors open once this all smooths over, and paychecks into the hands of their employees, of course. We'll focus on metrics to follow that will ensure clarity throughout the process of staying alive through this crisis. Very, very excited to bring on a guest for this episode number 3 by the name of Dr. Jason Lortie, an educator, social scientist, and entrepreneur. Jason is an assistant professor of entrepreneurship at the School of Entrepreneurship for Florida Gulf Coast University, received his PhD in strategic management from Florida Atlantic University in 2016. Dr. Lortie's research ranges across topics such as social entrepreneurship and investment decisions for investors in early stage entrepreneurial ventures. Jason's founded and still manages multiple online businesses and works daily with students, clients to help them found and grow their business. Well, Jason, welcome. I appreciate you stopping in on this episode, and we look forward to chatting. So, and for all of our listeners out there, fun fact: I had Professor Lortie, Dr. Lortie, as a teacher. I believe it was my junior year of social entrepreneurship. That was a lot of fun, and I know.
I'm pretty sure that was the very first class I ever actually taught at FGCU too.
Okay, yeah. And that was right around the same time that they even launched the entrepreneur program as well. Correct?
That was, yeah, so fall of 2017 was the very first semester that the entrepreneurship undergraduate degree was actually established at FGCU. They had classes before that for the minor that was happening within the management program, but I was hired for that semester, and then that semester was the actual launch of the undergrad degree. Yeah, it was really exciting times.
Yeah, no, that's super exciting. I don't know if you happen to know this actually. In summer 2017, I know you know Professor Stout, Andy Stout.
Yeah.
Worked very closely with her as a teacher and then a bit of a mentor throughout that process of the whole approval of the major. And so come fall 2017, actually, I had been the first one to enroll in the degree. But not just enroll into the degree, had been working with the faculty, been working with Annie, and had been already starting my first company, as well as developing the second company, Where the Fun. So super exciting. Both have been there from the very start, and that's super exciting. I actually hadn't quite realized that they brought you on for the exact launch of the program. That's super exciting.
It was just a growth thing. They could see how many students were going to start enrolling in the undergrad degree, so they needed to make sure that they had faculty that could cover, especially all the new classes that were going to be added, because they had the existing classes from the minor. But since 2017, if you include that fall semester, we've added 10, I think, completely new classes or completely revamped existing classes. So it's just been a really exciting time at FGCU for the School of Entrepreneurship.
Very nice. Awesome. And then I know you work on a consulting business. Remind me what.
The consulting that I do is with startups for the most part. Then I have also expanded into doing consulting with people that have e-commerce businesses. So how I can help them either grow their businesses, or just in terms of helping them with like the actual design of their websites and stuff to make sure that they're optimizing for sales. I do have some other consulting that I do. With it's with a partner of mine. We actually both went to FAU for our PhDs, where we try to help people that are interested in investing in businesses to kind of give like a second opinion on the valuation of those businesses. So we have an algorithm that we've developed that we use to utilize a lot of different information about the target investment business to try to get a valuation that they can use to kind of either ease what it is that they think it is, or potentially change their opinion of whether or not it's a good investment, bad investment, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. Then the idea behind that PhD specifically, so the training that we basically receive is within a management department at a university. We cover all of the different aspects of management and business academic literature. Strategic management, in particular, though, focuses on the ideas of how organizations and companies compete with each other, basically. So it's a very external type of way of looking at things. You could look at like organizational behavior type of research, but that looks really at employees within the business and how do you manage those employees within a business. So strategic management is really this idea of how do we compete, how do we secure resources, how do we build legitimacy in the external kind of market. This is all the stuff then if for those of you that like taken undergrad classes or even graduate classes on like Porter, Michael Porter would be like the godfather of strategic management research with Porter's five forces and
Mm-hmm.
the ideas of low cost competitors and differentiating competitors and all of those types of ideas. So that's kind of where my background comes from in my training then as a PhD with that type of training. So
I believe you even introduced us to Michael Porter when I
I
had you
think
as a professor.
I'm pretty sure we watched a video in the social entrepreneurship class with Michael
The
Porter. It's a
name,
really cool video
yeah.
because like here's this guy who has made his career on this idea of like for-profit businesses and how to for-profit businesses make more money basically, and that he gave this TED talk. Maybe you could link to it for people, but he gives this TED talk where he basically talks about this idea of how it's going to be for-profit businesses in the future that lead the way in terms of addressing social issues because they are the ones that have all the resources and
Mm-hmm.
they have a scalable, repeatable business model that allows them to continue to secure more resources, something that nonprofits don't really have, and something that government, and you're kind of seeing some of it happening now with everything that's going on. Governments aren't always in the best places to take care of social issues either. So it's a really cool TED talk. I'll find the link for you and I'll send it over
Okay.
for you.
Yeah, yeah. We'll make sure we get that link for all the listeners. So, with your experience, then, obviously, with everything going on, we're in a very abnormal state of doing business.
Yeah.
And I know, whether it be just working with, the between the businesses that you work with and just from your background and which you're well aware of, what sort of what businesses do you think are feeling the pains the worst? And maybe do you have any words of strategic encouragement for them?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing right now is those businesses that don't have some type of online channel to sell in, that have been deemed by whatever their local or state government might be to be non-essential are obviously going to be the ones that you really don't have, unfortunately, a lot of options at this point. If you had a channel that allowed you to sell online, whether it be through Amazon, whether it be through your own website, or even if it's you think of like restaurants that have like these channels of like they can utilize DoorDash or whatever it might be, like those businesses can figure out ways to get by still, but it's super unfortunate, and you're definitely seeing it just as if you are going out to grab essential items and you're driving around, you're seeing that strip malls are empty. Retailers, just in general, obviously they're struggling because it's almost like we have, at this point, temporarily at least, kind of outlawed their general business model of allowing people to come into a small space and
Mm-hmm.
utilize those businesses' services. Um, I think the good news is that if you are doing the research on your local area based off of whether it might be your city government, county government, state government, I think the way I've been reading it, at least here in Florida, is a lot of businesses are essential though. And that's some good news. So there is hope that you know Florida finally we got to the point where we had the shelter in place kind of come out, but even as you read it, you'll see there are a lot of businesses that are still deemed essential. So if you are in one of those kind of businesses, as long as you're keeping things safe for people, you should be able to at least stay open. It doesn't mean that you're going to see the same level of business that you did, but um, you can hopefully at least be staying open during this time and providing some type of service and keeping some type of revenue coming in. I think the other good news is though is, and obviously I'm not trying to be political in any way or others, but I think what you're finally seeing is most state governments have finally turned the corner on this idea of we're going to have to do a shelter in place to just get it over with as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the idea of you had some some wishy-washy kind of messages that were coming from different governments and stuff about what we should and shouldn't do. My personal opinion is it probably prolonged how long this is going to go on for. So I think you're finally seeing that good news being where everybody's for the most part locked down, and the longer that we can kind of stay locked down without transmission, that will be hopefully the sooner everybody gets back to business as usual. Or yeah, I think we'll talk about it today. Business as whatever it's going to look like at the end of this. So
Right. Absolutely. The new abnormal is the normal, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So, and I mentioned earlier, you just reminded me of a point. Government, state government, overall government stepping in. And I know that the CARES Act, is it today or was it yesterday, had finally just been
So
approved.
yeah. So the CARES Act was approved. I think it was like a week or two ago,
Okay.
maybe 10 days ago. The idea that I think you're getting at is the this paycheck protection program that's being it's basically $349 billion of the 2 trillion or so dollar CARES Act. This paycheck protection program is the thing that most businesses or small businesses, even depending on the way you look at the definitions in the law, they are going to start getting some type of relief, hopefully. So the basic idea behind this is they're loans, but I put loans in quotation marks, Connor, just because they're most likely going to be forgiven, meaning they won't really have to be paid back.
Mm.
Um, so just kind of laid out, if you're a business that has 500 or fewer employees and you are taking on this money for the purposes of uh, payroll related expenses, meaning you're going to continue to pay your employees. You're going to pay different types of bills that you might have in terms of rent, in terms of insurance costs, whatever it might be. If you're using this money for those types of purposes, they'll be forgiven. You wouldn't have to pay them back. If you take the money on and you don't use it for those purposes, it basically becomes a 1% interest rate loan that would become mature. I think what I saw was within 2 or 3 years. But obviously, I think what you're going to see is most people are going to take this on for the purposes of exactly what it sounds like, protecting those paychecks of their employees and trying to keep
Hmm.
them on the payroll as long as they hopefully can. Um, there's been different discussion about a lot of things here. The first thing being whether or not $349 billion is even enough. The good news is it seems like Congress has left it open to potentially funding it for more money if they see that it doesn't kind of last. Um, but I know that for people that are incorporated, today's the day. So we're currently recording this April 3rd on Friday. Like today is the day that it opens, and I
Mm.
would definitely suggest like you get on it. You've most likely already been contacted by your bank, whatever your bank that you do your business banking with. They've most likely already messaged you with this type of information. But I would definitely get on it because people that I've been talking to, they are like at the door, ready to go. Like they want to make sure that they get it, and they want to make sure that they get as much as they can. So I would definitely suggest that if you are in a position where you think you're eligible, which if you're a business that has even one employee, you're most likely eligible. Definitely start looking at it. Get on it as fast as you possibly can.
Okay, yeah, and to kind of tie this into, I've seen the unemployment rate skyrocketing.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, I think last week it was at 3.5 million. This week, as you mentioned, we're recording this on April 3rd. This previous week, I think we hit 6.65 million.
that's the
Um,
numbers that I saw. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Do you foresee? I mean, this could just very well be an entire assumption in itself, but with these stimulus packages now finally being released, hopefully slow down that increase in that unemployment rate. Do you think that's going to have any correlation with it, or?
Yeah, one of two things. I think what you'll see is happen: either businesses that have been holding on as long as they possibly can to not furlough or lay people off,
Right.
they'll potentially now have access to this money where it will allow them to hold off even longer. A really good friend of mine um, he owns a couple of bars in Orlando, and then he owns a bar in Daytona. And just through text and keeping up with what's going on and everything, he's like, if I can get $100,000 in these loans, I'll be good for the next 3 months. Like I won't have to lay anybody off. I can keep people on the payroll, even though we really, he's a bar slash nightclub for the most part, so he's not able to do his normal business model at this point.
Mm.
But if he's saying that's the number, you give me that much, and I will happily tell my employees to stay home, and I will stay home knowing that I can keep them paid at least some for the next 3 months, and then we'll see what happens at that point. So I think you're going to see that, but then I also think what you might see is people uh, come back off unemployment because businesses that get access to this money will actually be able to rehire them. Like, I can put you back on my payroll now because I have access to this money, and you don't necessarily need to go through the process of taking unemployment.
Right.
Uh, Unemployment, though, is something where business owners should be going out of their way to push that to their employees. Though, obviously, not every employee is as educated about employment law as potentially business owners. So, if business owners should be going out of their way for those people that they're not firing people, obviously. They are laying them off or furloughing them, which makes these employees completely eligible to take unemployment benefits, and people should do that. I've heard some horror stories, unfortunately, because, like you just said, that these systems are getting slammed right now with 60 times the amount of people that they normally would be seeing. That doesn't mean that those benefits aren't there for people. So
Okay. And now, knowing that business owners, they can expect more than likely, it's almost a guarantee at this point, less monthly revenue. They're not pulling in the same amount of business as usual.
yeah.
Uh, do you suggest any, just strategy, or just, to pinpoint any key metrics or KPIs that businesses can keep an eye on to ensure some form of sustainability, knowing that they can't really rely on what that the monthly sales look like?
Yeah, I think I would approach the question in two ways. The first one is actually kind of not the answer that you're asking for, but I think it should be said to put it in the head of people. The second one, I'll get to these ideas. I have a list here that I'll run through with different types of metrics and KPIs that people can start looking at now. So I think the first way to answer that question is um, when we've seen these types of external shocks in the marketplace, like when we see what we call them in the research literature as exogenous shocks. They're things that happen in the environment that as a business owner you just don't have control over. In my opinion, it just based off my lifetime, what it appears to be is these are kind of once in a decade type things that happen. So in my lifetime, it's been 9/11, it's been the Great Recession, 08, 09, 2010, and then it's been coronavirus. Those are my three big events, and they seem to space themselves out once in a decade where these are just things that you're not going to have control over. When these types of things happen, we see two things happen. The first is innovation while it's happening. So you're seeing this, like you are seeing some really, really innovative ideas happening at types of businesses to keep themselves in business now. Um, the one restaurant that me and my girlfriend really love is a pizza place out in Cape Coral. So they've gone to a complete to-go model, but they're a bar that's really well known for cocktails. So what they're doing is they're selling cocktail kits now. You'll get the entire bottle of liquor with their kind of pre-made mix, which is really like the thing that you're going for. That's their differentiating factor, and they're like, you can't have it here, but we'll sell it to you for a pretty decent price too, and take it home with you. They're saying you can make 15, 20 drinks at home with it. Pay us $100. Like, that is a really cool revenue stream, and it's a super innovative thing. I personally, I wouldn't have thought about that, but I don't own a restaurant either, so I'm not really in that space. So I think you're seeing that happening. The other thing then that you see after these things pass is you see that new normal emerge, and you see a ton of opportunities that start emerging after the fact. That's what I had this discussion with my students yesterday in class, virtually, obviously, but if you are a business owner, if you're someone interested in startups, if you're someone that considers himself an entrepreneur, most likely you have that mindset where you're not looking at this as the end all be all. You're just going out of business, packing it up, and you're done. Most likely what you're looking at this as is a huge opportunity, not just now, because there's obviously opportunities now given what's going on, but after the fact. Like, what do things look like after the fact, and what types of opportunities will be kind of out there and created because businesses are more concerned about sanitation. Restaurants are maybe under stricter sanitation laws and regulations, things that businesses don't necessarily have control over, but create opportunities for other people. So I think that's the first way to answer that question. Is there are things that you can be doing now, there's things that you can be doing to plan for the future, and that might mean You're changing your business model. It could mean a very big pivot to something completely new. Um, to get at the ideas that you're asking about, then some of the metrics that you could be paying attention to right now for your business as kind of revenue takes a hit. I think the way I look at this is that most likely means you're slower, unfortunately. Um, but again, looking at that as opportunity, doing things within your business that you can do now to optimize for when things get back to normal, when you can really hit the ground running again. Things that you maybe wouldn't have focused on in the past because you didn't have time, you're managing your business, that you have time for now. So I'll give you, let's see, 6 that I pulled that I think are really, really good. First one, something that's oftentimes very overlooked, but is a super effective way of really engaging with customers: email effectiveness. So a lot of companies do email marketing. A lot of companies don't look at their email marketing because, again, it's let's send the emails out. Whatever happens, happens. We don't have time to go back and look at it. Now's the time. Start working on your email campaigns. The types of metrics that you're shooting for here: 20 to 30% open rates. So if you send out 100 emails to 100 customers, you should be able to track in your autoresponder and see that you're getting at least 20 or 30 of those people opening that email. If you're not, something's wrong with your subject line, something's wrong with the byline. Who's it coming from? What's the name of your company on that byline? Whatever it might be. The other idea with email marketing then is at least 5% click-throughs. So in that email body, if you send out 100 emails, you should be getting at least 5 clicks to some type of action, whether it's going back to your website, whatever it might be. Now is the time. Go and look at your email campaigns over the past year, past 2 years, and see where your metrics are at. If you're within those metrics, you're doing pretty good. If not, what else are you doing with your time? This would be a great time to start looking at it. The other idea that I have written down is the idea of your ratio of cost of your acquisition of your customer to revenue. So again, this would be a great time to maybe dive into your books and start looking at how much we're spending on advertising, how much does it cost us to generate a new customer, and how does that compare to our overall revenue from that customer. The ratio that we really look at here is 33%. If you're spending more than 33% of your revenue on acquiring new customers, you're doing something wrong, most likely. You're really giving away a lot of your margin. So this would be a great time to start looking at that and optimizing. How do we better spend our advertising to ensure that we are getting the correct ratio, the correct return on that? Another one that you can start looking at, and I think it's something that's oftentimes overlooked, but I pay attention to it just based off my background. What's going on with your website? So it would be a really good time to start seeing some of the different metrics within your website and potentially optimizing your website to give a better service, give a better experience to your customers when they interact with you on your website. Some of the things that we really pay attention to: site speed. If you have Google Analytics installed on your website, which you absolutely should, it's free. As a business owner, you should have it. What you're looking for is a maximum of 5-second page load times for all of your pages. So you can go and you can basically look at all of your page load times by averages. These should all be under 5 seconds. If they're not, you can optimize them. You can redesign those pages. You can minimize file sizes of images. You can clear out some old text, whatever it might be, to make sure that you're getting those page load times down. You can also look at what's called the time on page, average time on page. The metric that we look at here is, and the cutoff for the metric is basically a minute on average per page. So if I can basically, again, sort out within my Google Analytics account all of my pages on my website and view what's the average amount of time that people spend on that specific page. It should be at least a minute, and this is an engagement type of thing. If you're not seeing that level of engagement, then most likely what's happening is people aren't really getting anything from that page on your website. Maybe it needs to be deleted. Maybe it needs to be edited. Maybe you need to take 2 pages that are kind of basic and put them together into something that makes more sense. The last one that I have written down is then just this idea of upsell. So upsell rates. Go back and look at repeat customers, and now is the time to really optimize around that, because I think what you're seeing is customers are rallying around the brands that they are going to be loyal to. So if you're a company that traditionally hasn't really done a very good job of maximizing your upsell rates to your existing customers, now's the time to start trying to optimize around that. Take that metric of whatever it is, that repeat business level that you've been at and see how far you can push it in a time like now where people are trying to be loyal, I think, to small businesses and to businesses that are in their local community. So it's certainly a metric that you would, in the present tense, could really potentially help you with revenue as well, since people can try to access you in some way where they don't necessarily need to become a new customer. So
Wow, that I think that was absolutely gold for anyone listening. I think you just walked away with a ton of gold information. I know as I was listening, as you're talking, Dr. Lortie, I'm thinking of all the different metrics in my head from our Google Analytics account for Fieldr. I'm thinking of
yeah,
our open rate, which I can confidently say is on average above a 32% open rate
that's awesome. Yeah, you're
for
right
our
where you should
email
be then,
newsletters.
which is great.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
guys do
that
you have good content in your email newsletters too. So like they look
thank
professional,
you.
they come across. So it doesn't surprise me that you have
Right.
a high open rate. You know, what about like your
Awesome.
click through rate then for like the emails?
Average about 6 to 7%.
Perfect.
So
Yeah. So those
right when
are
you said five, I was like, no,
yeah,
yeah.
those are the lines in the sand that you typically look at. For different brands that I have, it's weird. Like you'll see some brands that I have that go to certain types of customer segments. When you do like follow up emails to those types of customers, it's weird. Like they don't respond to it. It's because I'm trying to take something that works for one type of customer and do the same exact thing with another customer, and I can't do
Hmm.
it. So then you have to feel like, okay, so how do I rate this email for this type of person to get that response that I'm looking for? But they're just, these are the cutoffs that you can really start looking at. And really, again, I think it's things that people, when you're running a business, you sometimes get stuck working in the business a little too much, and you don't necessarily have the time to go back and look at how are we actually performing on some of these kind of basic metrics that apply to all businesses at this point. So now's the time. You know, if you find yourself having extra time because you're not quite as busy, optimize around these types of things, get some plans in place for what you can do to optimize these things. So that way, you know, given that it might be a month, 2 months, whatever it might be for as long as we're going to be doing this, once it comes back to, again, whatever the new normal is, you've optimized your business around these things. You should see not just increased revenue from existing customers, but as you go through the process of working with new customers at that point, you should be seeing revenue increasing from them as well. So,
Excellent. Awesome. And knowing that not all businesses can necessarily turn to you specifically for all of the great information that you have, where are some reliable sources that these businesses can turn to, whether it be relying on information to stay in contact with their customers or what their customers are doing, or just
yeah.
the entire government stimulus packages? What do you recommend? Where do you recommend business owners to go for that reliable information throughout this?
Yeah, so if you're looking for information just on what's happening with the virus, if you're looking on what's happening with government assistance and stuff like that, the two sources that I've actually been using just personally for just raw numbers to track what's happening with new cases and stuff, both Google and Bing put out informational kind of pages. So Bing's is like, I think it's bing.com/COVID, and I think Google's is google.com/COVID-19. If you just looked for either one of them, you'd find them pretty quick. They're these are the raw counts of what's going on. You know, when you hear people talk about we're trying to flatten out the curve, you can see from the graphs that these people are obviously putting together, the companies are putting together. It hasn't quite happened yet here in the United States. Um, but the good news is that we live in a democratic society where we have companies like these where they can put out somewhat reliable information to public, people in the public that are concerned with it. Whereas, unfortunately, it's you're hearing in other countries that they don't have access to information. They don't have the open kind of media that happens here in the United States. So that's where I'm personally going for information related to programs that are out there that can help small businesses. The SBA is definitely the place that you want to go to. So this is the SBA.gov, just their website. The Small Business Association is really, they've done a very good job of taking everything that's in the CARES Act and this Paycheck Protection Program and making it kind of easy to digest, easy to read on their website. Um, all of the types of things from eligibility to timing to how does it actually work, what can I use the money for. The SBA has done a really good job of putting that type of information out there. The other information that you might be looking at then is stuff that I think I already mentioned it, but stuff that might be coming from your bank, um, because you're probably going to be accessing information and money, honestly, from the program from your banking institution, make sure you're paying attention to information that they're putting out, because they're going to want to make sure that they're trying to help their customers as much as they possibly can in these times as well. I also think I personally appreciate the Kauffman Foundation. So for those of you that have maybe never heard of it, you can find them at Kauffman.org. It's KAUFFMAN.org. The Kauffman Foundation is one of the leading nonprofits for small business and entrepreneurship advocacy in the United States. They do a lot of funding of research that people like me do on entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship, but they also do a really good job of just, again, providing information to entrepreneurs and small businesses. What they've been doing is they've set up like a current event page related to the COVID stuff that you can find on their website. It's just a really kind of interesting resource that's out there that, again, for someone that is running a business or interested in getting information related to businesses, they're reliable in the sense that they're really looking out for giving good information to those types of people.
And if that wasn't enough, I've been seeing chambers of commerce putting together a lot of resource pages on their websites. And again, they are definitely tying in everything at a statewide and national level that businesses ought to be following and staying informed on. But I've seen a lot of that, a lot of that locality benefit come through the different resource pages that chambers are having. I've seen a lot, the Fort Myers Chamber, Stara, Naples,
Yeah.
they're all doing a great job of newsletters and just, again, that resource page, getting all the information out. I've even heard informal or formal, whatever you want to refer to it as, partnerships being formed between local companies and the chambers in order to collaborate to get through this together. So again, if that wasn't enough, I definitely encourage, all listeners to check out the local chambers of commerce, whatever city, whatever town you're in, visit their website, because they ought to have some information, which very well could then also redirect, you to, like you mentioned, SBA.gov, or redirect you to Kauffman. I would imagine.
And again, we've talked about it a little bit so far, but this idea of each city and each county potentially has their own unique list of what's essential, what can be open, what you can do, what you can't do. I've noticed too that the Chamber of Commerce they've been really on the forefront of interpreting, okay, here's what we think you can do and can't do. So they're a really good information source for that type of thing too. If you're looking for like super local, how exactly are these executive orders now that are coming out from the national level, the state level, the county level? How can I interpret it here locally? And I agree with you. The Chambers of Commerce they're putting out information for that kind of thing.
Yep, absolutely.